2025 Early Connections Conference, Expression, presented by the Van Sloun Foundation. Early Connections Conference logo. Art is for everyone.
All right. I'm going to get started. Thank you all for sticking with us for the day. And I'm excited to share with you the last presentation, Art is for Everyone. My name is Sarah Espinette, and I am a supervising practitioner in the Deafblind School. I run the Creative Arts program for the Deafblind School, and I'm on the board of directors for the Charge Syndrome Foundation. I'm very excited to share with you today my love of art and some of the projects that I've done with my students. Next slide. So I'd like to start with this quote. I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I had no words for. I like to start with this quote because it really captures the way that the Creative Arts program views our art classes. Art provides our students with a different way to express themselves that they might not have otherwise. Next slide. In this presentation, I will cover my path to art in the Creative Arts program, what I've learned, considerations for teaching art, adapted materials, some of our favorite art programs and projects, the Deafblind Art Show, and then I'll end with Matthew's story. In the photograph here, a young boy with glasses is sitting at a table, and one hand he's holding a cloth and the other he's holding a paint roller. On the table is a black piece of paper with a white sun covered in yellow and orange paint. There's a paint tray next to the paper with different paintbrushes for him to use. This student, when he first started art classes, did not like to get his hands messy at all. And over the years, he's become more experienced with those materials, and he's becoming more adventurous with getting his hands slightly dirty. Next slide. So my path to art in the Creative Arts program. I'm not an art teacher. I'm a special education teacher by training, and I have no training in art therapy. I just have a strong love for art class. I grew up doing arts and crafts with my family and just loved all things messy. I started the Creative Arts program and the Deafblind program 15 years ago with other like-minded teaching assistants who wanted to bring back art to the classrooms. I was fortunate enough to work with a classroom teacher who allowed me the opportunity to create different art projects that would go along with the monthly unit we were working on. Our goal was to create art projects that were accessible and meaningful for our students, all while allowing our students to explore different materials. Next slide. So our philosophy, it's the process and not the product. So we believe that it is more important for students to come to art class and experience different textures and materials than it is for them to walk away from class with the finished product. If a student comes to art class and for the entirety of that class, they only place their hand in the paint or in the shaving cream or they touch the clay, that's wonderful. That's their first step in becoming an artist. We don't necessarily have to have them walk away with an art project, a canvas, and it doesn't have to be the same for each of our students. It's about their process. And if they create a product at the end, that's wonderful. But if they don't, it's about that experience. So in this picture, a girl in a brown sweatshirt has her hand in a green salad spinner. She's sprinkling glitter on the black canvas covered in pink and purple paints. Paint bottles and the cover to the salad spinner are on the table next to her work. And don't you worry, we'll see more of this wonderful artwork by the student. Next slide. So what I've learned. Over the last 15 years, being a part of the Creative Arts program has taught me so much about why art is important for our students. First, art allows our students to express themselves in a way that is uniquely their own. They can express themselves in a way that they might not have the words for. Art has allowed our students a space to explore new sensory experiences. It has empowered our students and shown them what they're capable of. Art is a part of our expanded core curriculum. So having regular access to art class helps develop those skills. And art can be a calming and relaxing experience for some of our students. And for some, it's now their favorite choice time activity. So it really expands their rec and leisure activities beyond, sports or music. Art is such a great way for our students to stay engaged. Next slide. So some considerations for teaching art to students who are deaf-blind and blind. The first, specifically for deaf-blind students, is that dual sensory impairment. They don't see the world the same way that we do. So this might mean that we need to explain things in greater detail or provide a tactile model for the project. A lot of our classrooms in the fall will do a unit on apple picking, and this may lead to projects about apples. So if you're going to have your student create a painting or a sculpture of an apple, you need to make sure that your student understands the concept of an apple. Have they seen a whole apple before, or are they only presented with a sliced up apple? Or is their experience only been with apple juice? Do they know what that apple is? If they don't, maybe it's a good opportunity to have a class where you're just exploring a whole apple and everyone's talking about how it feels, how heavy is the apple. Then cutting it open together so they see that process, but making sure that you take that extra time to make sure they understand the concept that you're going to be working on within the art class. Next slide. Another consideration is tactile defensiveness. Students might not want to touch the materials you're working with. Start small. Have the students spend some art classes exploring those new materials. And remember, it's not always about that product. This is one of those great opportunities to use choice making. So if you are going to be showing a student some materials that they might not want to engage with, maybe give them a few different materials to choose from, and they can select which one they're going to be brave with for that class. Or maybe use that sandwich technique where they're going to start with a material that they're familiar with and they're comfortable with. Try that one they're not so comfortable with for a moment, and then go back to that one that they're more familiar with. Next slide. The tools that we use. So what can the students grip? Do we need to find adapted paintbrushes? So I'll share more examples of the adapted materials that we use later on in the presentation, but that's such a huge consideration. We need to make sure that our setup in the environment is made for our students to be able to engage to their fullest potential. So this might mean on your end, when you're teaching art, you have to do a little bit of work ahead of time to make sure that the brushes are right, the table's right, and the seating is right. Next slide. The next is allergies. So this was a big one. When I first started teaching, I had to look through all of the paint and the glue that we were using to make sure that they didn't have any common allergens that some of our students were allergic to. I didn't realize how many things went into paint. So making sure that everything was egg-free and soy-free, and that the students were really able to engage with all of the materials in a safe and productive way. Next slide. Students who have a trach. It's something that we need to take into consideration when we're working with supplies that could enter their lungs if they're airborne. So feathers, sand, glitter, these all have the potential to be very dangerous for our students. So just thinking about who's in the art class with that student, what they might like to use as their materials, and think about seating, maybe having those students sit further apart, or maybe having them join a different art class for that day to keep that student safe. Next slide. Positioning. So do we need to use a tray to bring the product closer to them or to a spot in their field of vision? Thinking about our students and what their field of vision is, if we are thinking about doing an activity where we're painting with our feet, but they have a lower field loss, they're not going to be able to see the activity that is going on. So thinking about how can we change this activity to allow them to fully experience it. And also when thinking about positioning, this is a great opportunity to collaborate with others. I've had a lot of really wonderful art classes in collaboration with our physical therapists where we've gotten students out of their wheelchairs and tried different positions for them. We've had students in a harness in the HOPSA, and they've been able to walk across a canvas and paint with their feet. Thinking about maybe for this activity, if they really love art class, but they don't really love being in their stander, maybe art class is scheduled when they're in their stander, so they're engaging in a preferred activity while doing that not preferred task of standing. Next slide. Providing instruction in a meaningful way. So for a student who is blind and has limited knowledge of different types of flowers, I wouldn't ask them to make a purple daisy. Those qualifiers don't really give them the information that they need to create their project. So thinking about your students, do you need to provide a tactile model of the project? And does it need to be smaller tactile models of each step of the project? If there's 5 steps, do they need a tactile model of all 5 steps of the project to fully understand the steps needed to create the final product? Or do you need to have photos of the project? Do you need to make sure that the salient features of those photos are highlighted? So just making sure that your instruction is being provided in a meaningful way for your students. Next slide. So the adapted materials that we use. So a pencil grip can be a really great tool that's used in OT or the classroom, typically used for writing activities. But this is a really great tool that can be used to add onto a paintbrush, a marker, or a colored pencil to help the student better hold on to that material. So pictured here are different colored pencil grips with an example of one on a pencil. Next slide. Adapted brushes, so textured brushes. So these come in a variety of textures for the bristles. Each brush has a wider base, making it really easy to grip when the student is painting. And I like using these brushes because the student can grip it like they would typically hold a paintbrush, or depending on their grasp, they can take it from the top and hold it that way to swipe. Also, each of these has the different textured bristles. So it's a great way if you're getting your student to engage in this art activity by taking the brushes before they have any paint or glue or whatever medium you're working on and brushing it on the open palm of their hand, talking about the texture. Do you want to use the brush that has the sponge today, or do you want to use the one that has the foam on it? And really allowing them that time to fully explore these different texture brushes and talking about what it's going to look like when they place the paint on their canvas. So pictured here are 4 different texture brushes. They all have the wide base red handle. 2 of them are yellow with a foam bristle, and the other 2 2 are yellow with a sponge bristle, and the other 2 have the foam. Next slide. Adapted scissors. So when we're thinking about art, we also want to teach our students some functional skills, and cutting is one of those skills. So pictured here are different colored adapted scissors. These scissors don't require the students to place their fingers in the holes of the handles. They can just hold onto the outsides of it and squeeze. And these make it really more accessible for our students to cut part of the art project. So if you're having them do a collage with different textured papers, why not allow them to cut that paper and work on that OT skill? Instead of rushing through it and you cutting all the materials ahead of time, allow extra time. Maybe instead of having this project be done in 1 class, allow for 2. Let the student pick the paper they're going to pick, cut those pieces of paper into the size that they would like, and then the next class assemble that art project. We also have scissors here that are created from the Adaptive Device Center, where it's a typical pair of scissors and it's on a wood block, and they only require 1 hand to do the cutting. Those are scissors that are oftentimes used for our older students in their vocational programming. A lot of our students use them when cutting flowers for flower delivery. So transitioning that skill that they might already know over to another activity helps with generalizing some of those functional skills. Next slide. Some more adapted paintbrushes. These paintbrushes are available on Amazon or at any craft store, and they come in a variety of different handle shapes. Again, it allows those students who don't have that fine motor skill of grasping a skinnier paintbrush. It allows them to either grip it at the base, at the top of the brush with their whole hand, and then the shorter paintbrushes that are pictured on the screen allow for that as well. And maybe some of our smaller paintbrushes would work with our smaller artists in preschool. So the pictures on the screen are different colored and sized adapted paintbrushes. Next slide. A picture on the screen is someone's hand holding a tennis ball as a grip for a paintbrush up to a painting. So this is just one of the examples of ways that we can think outside the box. If you don't have access to purchasing these adapted paintbrushes, maybe you can use some of the things that you already have lying around the house or the classroom. And one of those might be a tennis ball. By placing a hole in both sides of the ball, you can slip the paintbrush through, creating a larger surface area for students to grip the paintbrush. Next slide. A slant board. So a lot of our students use slant boards in the classroom here at Perkins. It helps to bring those academic lessons into their visual field so that they're able to access their materials. So why not carry that over to art class? If a student needs their materials on a slant board when they're in the classroom, they're not all of a sudden going to be able to access them if they're flat on the table in art. So making sure that if a student's accommodation for accessing materials is a slant board, bring that slant board to art class or make sure you have some there. And it really just helps to bring their artwork to their visual field. So this picture here is a red slant board with a painting of a flower on it. Next slide. Some more adapted materials are the easy hold straps. So pictured here is a toothbrush and a paintbrush, each with the easy hold straps, and one of them is shown on a child's hand, and you can see the hand is completely flat. So with the easy hold strap, it is sliding onto the student's hand, and they don't need to grip that paintbrush. It's a part of their hand now. So as they're moving their hand around, the paintbrush is going to stay with them. So they're able to use that to create their art project, and they don't have to worry about being able to grip and to hold. Next slide. Trays. So I really like using trays with my students, especially for those who have difficulty keeping their workspace organized. Trays will create a very clear physical boundary for students when they're creating their artwork. So sometimes I might put, if they are working on a project that is based on a piece of paper, I'll place that paper in the tray, and they know that's where they need to bring their materials to attach it. Other times, if they're working on a sculpture, if we're working with clay or other materials, I might place all of the objects that they have access to create that sculpture in the tray, and then they can bring them over to their artwork. It just really helps to keep things organized for the student so that they're able to access their materials, and it's one of those things that can be carried over into other settings. A lot of our students might have a tray at lunch to help them organize their lunch setup. So if they're using a tray in another environment, again, generalize that tray to art class to help them organize their materials. Next slide. Stamps for painting. So these are some of my favorite to work with my preschoolers with. These are different textured stamps that again can slide right onto the student's hands. And what I like to do with these is allow my students the time to bring their arm in to the canvas on their own. So for some of our younger learners, they're also learning how to control their arms and bring that movement in the purposeful movement of, I have something that I am going to bring over to the canvas and I am going to create the artwork. So with these stamps, it stays on their hand and it allows them the choice to pick if they want to have polka dots, or if they want it to look like leopard print, or if they want it to look like a bunch of squiggly lines. And all they need to do is tap it once. It doesn't require them to drag a paintbrush across the paper. You could also use this if they are going to be the ones to put glue onto a paper or glue onto another surface to attach another tactile material. So these are a really great way for our students who are still learning how to control their arms and those movements, a really quick way to stamp either the paint or the glue or whatever medium that they're working with, without having to worry about gripping that paintbrush. So the picture here is a stamp with a handle and using paint to make the artwork on a white piece of paper. Next slide. So materials that we use a lot of recycled materials. Glue is a big one that we use. Paint, shaving cream, textured paper, tissue paper, toys, pipe cleaners, beads, buttons, sand, and salad spinners. So pictured here is a student holding a bucket of a variety of cut up paper shapes while other materials are around him on the table. Next slide. All right, text on screen, our favorite art projects. The first one is puffy paints. This, I think, is a fan favorite down in our preschool. So if you mix equal parts shaving cream and glue and add a dash of paint for color, you can create your own puffy paint. And this will dry and it will keep that shape that you create. So if you are creating a painting with this and you leave it with a big bump of the shaving cream and glue, it is going to dry that way. So then you are creating a tactile painting for your students. And because you're mixing shaving cream and glue, it has that sticky, tacky quality to it. So if they want to put sand over it to create a texture or glitter or something else, it will stay on that painting. So I've done this with students as a part of an art and social studies project. We were talking about the states and we were talking about maps, and the student wanted to create a map that all of the students in his classroom would be able to access. So this student chose to do green for the land and blue for the water, but he wanted to add something else so that when his classmates who were not sighted were feeling this canvas, they could tell the difference between the two puffy paints. So he added sand to make it gritty for the land, and then he added glitter for the water to make it smooth like the water. So it's a great way, again, to create tactile models, but it allows our students who might not use their vision to explore a painting to paint alongside their sighted peers. So we're not going into art class saying, well, you can see, so you're going to paint, and you can't, so you're doing something different. Everyone is doing the same project. So the picture here is a young girl using both hands to paint with her puffy paints. Next slide. Spin art. So using a salad spinner to create spin art is a great mess-free way to create beautiful artwork. Students can work on choice making to select what colors they would like to use. And salad spinners come in a variety of designs. So there's the push, pull, and crank models. So students can work on their gross motor skills and choose the one that's most appropriate for them. So in this picture, a young girl is holding a salad spinner on the tray of her chair with assistance from a teacher. And I'm holding up her canvas. It's a black canvas with purple and pink paint. And together, we chose those colors and we squirted that into the salad spinner. And then the student pressed down on the salad spinner. And as it spun, it dispersed that paint to create the spin art. But as it was spinning, the whole salad spinner shakes. So not only is it a great way to create the art, it's a sensory experience as well. So she held on to the sides of the salad spinner as it was shaking, and she was smiling and laughing because for her, it was a really fun sensation. We have other students who really put their head into it and will use their forehead as they are pushing on the salad spinner. think it's hilarious, but after they choose their paint colors and put it on their canvas, the student just leaned forward and used her forehead to press that salad spinner and again, create really beautiful artwork. We've also done this, like I said before, with the pull or cranking it and talking with your students' occupational therapist to see what might be a good skill for them to work on, or their physical therapist, is a great way to work on those interdisciplinary skills in art class. Next slide. Painting without brushes. So again, this is another favorite for our students, and it's simply just painting with different materials. So we might use toy cars or a plastic fork, pipe cleaners, cotton balls, toilet paper rolls, marbles, anything that you can think of to put paint on a canvas. So the picture here is a blue and red painting created without paintbrushes. This was created with toy cars. So I had a student who really wanted to participate in art, but again, didn't want to get his hands messy. He wanted to paint, but the idea of putting his hands in the paint was just very off-putting. But this student loves fire trucks, loves trucks. So we got a bunch of fire trucks and he chose blue and red paint and he rolled his trucks in the paint and then he rolled it across the canvas and has created these lovely canvases that I have one in my office. Ed Bosso buys one at our art show every year for his office. They're really popular paintings because they're so uniquely his. He loves the fire trucks. He creates his artwork. He's so proud of it. And it's very much uniquely his piece of work. Next slide. Tissue paper stained glass. So for a lot of our students, they like to look towards the light into the window. And let's make this more functional. Let's give them something to look at when they're light gazing. So using a lamination sheet, construction paper, glue, and tissue paper, students can create their own stained glass window design. So pictured here is a multicolored tissue paper stained glass butterfly in a window. We've done a variety of these over the school year. Every month we would pick a different one. So we're coming into May flowers. So we'll be doing a variety of flowers for our students to do the tissue paper and stained glass to hang in our windows. What's really great about this is the model that we have shown here, all the tissue paper is laying flat, but with a lamination sheet, even if the tissue paper lands on it and it's a little bit crunched up from the student's grasp, it'll still go through that lamination sheet. So the students can work on that grasp, bringing it over and release. And however the tissue paper falls is where we keep it for our students. So some of the students might not fill in every single one of those gaps, but again, as they're working on their grasp and release and bringing it over, and when they're finished, it makes it their own unique tissue paper stained glass that they can look at in the window as the light shines through. Next slide. Sensory water bottles. So mixing art and science together is a great way to explore these different tactile objects. So thinking about what items are going to float and which one are going to sink to the bottom. So students can work on scooping and pouring to create these sensory bottles. And again, it's one of those things that the students can bring with them when they leave and have as a sensory object in their classroom to do during choice time. You can talk about mixing colors. If I add a little bit of blue paint and a little bit of red paint and I mix it together, what color am I going to get? So thinking about those science components as well. So pictured here are 3 sensory water bottles with different materials in them, such as pom-poms, glitter, and colored water. Next slide. Mosaics. So this picture here is a rainbow against a blue background with butterflies and ladybugs, all made with various materials. This mosaic was created in our deafblind preschool. The rainbow was created using paint, crayons, textured paper, and familiar objects. And to create the blue background, students sat on the swings in their motor room and painted using their feet. So each student was assigned a different color of the rainbow, and then they chose how they were going to fill in that strip of color. So some chose to paint, others chose markers, there's textured paper, and there's objects that they're familiar with that might be their color. So for some students, it might be popsicle sticks, it might be their favorite stickers that they've added onto the rainbow, and then we put it all together. The clouds for the rainbow are made with shaving cream and glue. So it gives it that textured 3D effect for the students. And then we assembled it and it hangs outside of their preschool. Next slide. And then painting with our feet. So this again is a fun way to think about a different approach to painting. So there's two pictures on the screen. The first, a student's feet stepping onto white paper with pink paint on the bottom of her feet. And the other is a student sitting next to paper on the floor of different footprints made with paint. So the student who is sitting down is working with her physical therapist during this art class. So she is typically a student who uses an activity chair at school, but we really wanted to get her out of her chair to experience art in another way. She loves doing lotion on her hands and her feet, so we thought trying paint would be something fun and exciting for her. It's a great way for our students who might find holding any style of paintbrush really challenging. So using our feet is just an alternative and fun way. And it's messy and fun, and the kids love the foot bath to clean their feet after it. Next slide. So that brings us to our deafblind art show. So this is the culmination of all of the art the students have created over the school year. So each year, the students in the deafblind program showcase their artwork in our show. And the event is open to the whole campus and families. Students and staff work together to put the show on. And everyone participates in selecting the theme for the show. In the past, we've had shows such as red carpet art, my favorite things. We've done opposites, and this year, to align with our 200 years of Braille celebration, our art show that's taking place in June will be entitled Lots of Dots. So thinking about ways to bring Braille into art. Next slide. So this event showcases all of the amazing artwork that our students have created over the school year. It's a great opportunity for students to share their work with both peers and staff. And while our philosophy is it's about the process, not the product, a lot of our students do create some pretty amazing finished products. And for those students who don't create a finished product, we showcase pictures of them in the process so that everyone can be included in the art show, regardless of whether or not they create a product or not. So pictured here is a table covered with a black tablecloth displaying various canvases of artwork. Next slide. So student artwork can be made from recycled cardboard, glue, green paint right here. This was a part of a series, and one of the creations from the series is now on display at an art museum in Chicago with a price tag of $1,000. This student loves to work with recycled materials. He's very conscientious about the environment, and he wants to make sure that if he's using something, it's going to be recycled. And also, he wants to make sure it is going to be sturdy. He does not allow any shoddy craftsmanship in his art. And because of that, there's about a gallon of glue and paint on this, creating a very shiny and textured and beautiful sculpture. This student is newer to our deafblind school, and never allowed the opportunity to express himself before coming here. And when he started at Perkins, art was a way that we created that connection and that bond. And he's taken off with it since he's been here and now creates these amazing projects. And for him to have his art on display at a museum in Chicago is just amazing. So pictured here is the student artwork in the shape of a mountain made of cardboard, glue, and green paint. So I like to end with Matthew's story. I have two pictures here. The first is a teacher and student sitting next to each other smiling, and their hands are covered in shaving cream and glue. And then the next picture is a student proudly standing next to his artwork, hanging on the wall with a prize ribbon next to the artwork. So this is Matthew, and Matthew's story is one that really encompasses why art is so important for our students. Matthew started at Perkins when he was 11 years old with his twin brother, Brian. Both boys have Charge syndrome, and that's where their similarities really end. Brian was always the outgoing and vocal twin. When he entered the room, he had his arms out and he was ready to engage. And Matthew was the quieter of the two, more reserved and needed more time before warming up to staff. I was fortunate enough to work with both boys during art class, and that's where Matthew and I really developed our relationship. In art class, Matthew would come and he would really think about the process and what he was doing. If I said we were going to be using clay to create something, he was really thoughtful about what clay he was going to use. He was thinking about what he was going to add to it to create his artwork. And then his brother would come in and pick the first one that was there and shape it quickly into whatever he thought I wanted him to do, and then check off the box and then leave because art's on my schedule and I needed to finish it. So Matthew really took it as an opportunity to express himself. So myself and another teaching assistant who were working with Matthew in the classroom thought it might be a great way for him to spend his leisure time in the class. So we got him a canvas and a variety of different colorful tactile materials and just set it in front of him to see what he would do. And Matthew meticulously picked through all of the materials, and he started with colorful cotton balls and he placed them around the border of the canvas. And, you know, every now and then you would see him pull one off and pick a different color and put back on. And he did this for the entirety of the canvas. And during this process, someone walked into our classroom and said, wow, that's really beautiful. He should submit this to an art show that I heard of. It's called A Different Vision in Plymouth. So I thought, why not? He's, you know, a student at Perkins School for the Blind, Different Vision art show. Sure, let's see what happens. So we submitted his artwork, and I didn't do a lot of research into the show. And a few weeks later, I got an email saying that Matthew had won first place in one of the categories. So I let his family know, and they all came up from New Jersey, and we made a whole night of it. We went out to dinner, and then we got to the art show. And we walked in, and Matthew was the only artist like him. He was the only artist with Charge syndrome, the only artist who was deafblind. And we were just blown away by the fact that he beat out all those other artists for one of the categories and won. So as we were enjoying the art show, they called everyone over for the ribbon ceremony, and Matthew's name was called, and his mother was overcome by emotion, so sent me up on stage with him. And this was Matthew's turn to be in the spotlight. He was no longer the quiet, more reserved brother who was kind of hanging out in the background. He was the one in the spotlight. This was his time to shine. And when we got up on that stage and he got his ribbon, the smile on his face, ear to ear, and he just couldn't believe that all these people were here to see his work. And Matthew is now 28 years old. He's since graduated from Perkins, and he continues to do his artwork. I'm still in touch with the family, and they share that Matthew still finds joy in creating his art projects. He still finds joy in sharing his artwork and giving it to people as gifts. It's still something that allows him that calm and the ability to find an activity that relaxes him. So I like to share Matthew's story because it really shows how impactful art can be for our students. Having access to art and the ability to express himself in this way has been so empowering for him. It's provided him with an outlet when he's feeling sad or frustrated and a medium to express himself when he's feeling creative. So in closing, art can be engaging for our students. Art can be empowering for our students, and art can be for everyone. So thank you. The last picture, next slide. One more slide. Right here, just from our art project, and to share the feet on screen, purple and pink paint from our young artist. So I thank you so much, and I will take questions. And if anyone has any questions or wants the links to these adapted art materials or ideas for projects, please feel free to send me an email and I would be happy to share some of the things that we've done.
So you shared the story of your student using different textures in the puffy paint to distinguish for his other classmates. What else might you do in your art classes for students with no vision when it comes to things like we're choosing colors?
So for some of our students, color has no meaning to them. So I might provide them with other texture choices. Do you want to use the paper that's bumpy? Do you want to use the paper that's smooth, the paper that's rough? Providing them choices in a way that they can access and whatever sensory experience they're able to have. So maybe it's not by sight, maybe it's by touch. For some students, if they do want to participate in that painting activity, again, you could add things to the paint to have it feel differently. And then thinking about keeping allergies in mind, you might be able to add different scents to the paint. Maybe adding something to have the paint smell like vanilla or having the paint smell like a different fruit. There's those smelly markers, so you could, think about incorporating that into your paint to allow them that opportunity to use the senses that they do use in their art project. Thank you.
I'm curious if you have any advice for how to get a student, or in my case, my own child, interested in engaging in art projects at all. She has some functional vision, but I think maybe because of her vision impairment, she's just not particularly impressed by mark making. And when I put any sort of tool in her hand to, make marks on paper, she just tends to throw it.
Yeah, so this reminds me of that student with the fire trucks. I had him in my art class since he was in preschool at 3 years old. And when he would come and see the different projects that were up on the table, he would kind of look at him and push himself away and tell me he was too tired for art and that he just didn't want to participate. And it took years to get him to want to engage. And it was trying to find that one piece to make that connection. And for him, it was the fire trucks. And how can we include something that you like to add and have that be a functional part of the project? For other students, it's thinking about what is the purpose of this? For a lot of our students, we're asking them to do so many tasks throughout the day, and we often forget to tell them why. What is the purpose of this? So for a few of my students who were a little bit less than excited to join art, I would remind them that when you're done with this art project, you can bring it home with you and you can show your mom and dad, and then they can put it on the refrigerator and they can show everyone the amazing work you've done. So providing reasons as to what it's for, who they can share it with, and allowing them to discuss how it's going to make them feel proud to show their artwork could be one way as well.
Few questions in the chat here. This is from Betsy. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I wanted to check where you purchased the stamps with handles. I also wanted to check to see if you have ideas for fun and safe art ideas for students who may prefer exploring by mouthing. I work with infants and toddlers, and I'd love to hear your ideas about this. So where'd you get the stamps and some ideas for babies?
So the stamps I found on Amazon. If you search adapted brushes, they have a wide variety of materials and tools to use. And then thinking about students who like to explore with their mouth. This is something that I would work with an OT to see what they might be using for oral exploration, to see if you could tie that in. There's also different types of Play-Doh that you can create using, I don't have the exact recipe in my head right now, but I know it is with frosting and I believe cornstarch. And if you mix those together, it creates a safe and edible Play-Doh. So if they are exploring by mouth, that is something that is okay and that is safe. And then really just thinking about what tactile materials you want to use with that student. If they are still exploring by mouth, then thinking about using objects that are larger for the safety reasons. And also just thinking about those, if you are going to be doing paints, there's different ways for the students to place the paintbrush in their mouth. And again, that's something that you could work with an OT on finding the attachment for that paintbrush so they could paint that way.
Great. I'm going to keep going. This is a really nice comment from one of your students and their mom who are watching from home. She said, no need to share, but I'm going to. This was amazing. And Jack loved it.
Thank you.
Next here is Jill. Jill says, thank you so much. Please share your link to the art projects. I would appreciate them. I'm an itinerant TBI, and I'd love to share your ideas and projects with all of the classrooms that I visit.
Great.
So
Yeah.
Jill will be in touch.
Perfect.
Georgina asks, how do I get my daughter interested? And she referenced that her daughter has multiple disabilities.
Yeah, so again, just thinking about tying in the students' interest to the art project. So for some of our students, it might be listening to a favorite song while they're creating the artwork. It might be thinking of a way that you are doing a project while also engaging them. I've had a few students who are wheelchair users who don't really want to fully participate, but I might attach a paintbrush to their wheelchair, play their favorite Taylor Swift song, lay out a giant piece of paper on the floor, and then we spin around and we dance and we play and we see what we create after on that piece of paper after we've done having our dance party. Another way is putting things into a plastic bag with the canvas and some paint and some other textured objects, and then having them press their hands around it. It's like a sensory experience that they might want to engage in, and then after they have a finished product. So it's not directly doing the art project because they're not touching the paint and they're not putting their hands on those other ickier materials that they might not want to engage with, but it's more of that sensory play that results in an art project. And again, I think little steps and thinking about, allowing them the choice making, when possible, allowing them to pick what they're going to work with. For some of our students, when we go on field trip, we might go to an art store to look at the different materials and allow them the opportunity to make that selection. Because if they are doing an activity that might not be preferred, we really want to make sure that we are empowering them in this activity, providing choice making and making it a really positive experience.
That's great. I have one last one. This is from Giovanna. How can I introduce any of the art projects you recently showed us to my son? He's an adult man with cerebral impairment who 5 years ago became blind. Maybe with kids it's easier, but how do I do this with an adult?
I think that you could use those same approaches that you would with kids with an adult. I work with students in the deafblind school who are 3 to 22, and some of those students are engaging in art classes for the first time as they are older. So I don't think there's any real time where you stop being an artist or you can stop learning how to be an artist. For me, like I said before, I'm not an art teacher by training. I've learned by doing. So as an adult, I've continued to learn, and I believe that if I can continue to learn as an adult, so can he. So just those same approaches, thinking about what is interesting for him, what are the activities that are going to have him be engaged. If he's interested in a certain TV show or a certain movie or a certain color, tying those in. And then thinking about, since he's recently lost his vision, how can you create a tactile representation of what he's working on? Thinking about really talking about the texture of those things. And because he does have that idea from when he did have vision of what things might look like, including that, talk about, if he's gonna build one of those mountains like one of my students did, remember it is tall and it is bumpy. And when we're building it, include those features to it. So just really, again, trying to include those things that are important to him, keeping in mind that it's never too late to learn and that allowing those choices. That's it. Great. Thank you.